You're excited for Silksong? Yeah, aren't we all, puppy? But that's got me thinking about Hollow Knight again, and how a lot of people I know struggle to get past its opening hours, and I think that might be because it is intentionally designed to make you feel bad? Let me explain. So, what do I mean by bad? Wait a second, this doesn't feel right. Wait there. Yeah, that's better. Now, I don't mean the game is bad whatsoever. I think it's actually immaculately designed, but it's common for developers to use subtle tricks such as screen shake and deep low-end sound design to make attacks feel strong, for example. But in Hollow Knight, they're trying to achieve the exact opposite. They want you to feel small, weak, like an insignificant bug in a gigantic, decrepit world, and changing the smallest detail about how a character looks or controls can completely transform how the game feels overall. One of the highest contributing factors to this is that the knight is knocked back when they attack. And this tiny detail makes the knight feel light and makes the enemies feel so much more powerful and immovable in comparison. But along with this attack, the other most prevalent action you'll be performing the entire game is jumping, which has 3 elements of adjustment. We have the speed of the initial jump and how fast your jump begins, gravity or how quickly the character loses that momentum, and the terminal velocity, the maximum speed at which they can fall. And skewing with these 3 values can drastically alter how a jump feels and how the player perceives that character. A high initial jump speed, for example, and your character is going to feel powerful. If the gravity is too high, your character will feel extra thick, and having a low terminal velocity, and the characters are going to feel a bit floaty. And a lot of people describe the knight's jump as floaty. And this is due to his terminal velocity being incredibly low. This, coupled with his relatively slow initial jump speed and gradual curve of his gravity, makes him feel lighter, smaller, and ultimately weaker. This feeling is also increased by the immense amount of damage you take from even basic enemies, and death being so punishing, with the loss of all of your currency and resetting you back to the last sparsely distributed bench checkpoint. Keeping yourself alive becomes incredibly important. But you don't want to encourage the player to simply run past enemies due to this weak feeling, and this is discouraged twofold. By the currency geo dropping from enemies, which is used to purchase upgrades, access new areas, and fast travel, but also that the resource used to heal yourself from that damage is gained from attacking enemies, encouraging enemy engagement. But ultimately, these enemies aren't that difficult to fight, they just punish the player massively for misusing the restrictive moveset of the knight. Even something that seems like a positive, like the knight's variable jump height, means players have an extra step of mental gymnastics to compute when jumping over enemies of differing heights, increasing their chances of failure early on. Yes, you get a lot of minute control, but not the relative experience to understand how to utilize it yet, which is a really important balance in allowing the player to develop mechanical mastery. Huh? What's that? Oh, well, mechanical mastery is the state where once the mechanics of the game settle into your muscle memory, everything kind of melts away and you just do. You don't need to think about pressing the buttons during gameplay, it just happens, and this is sometimes called reaching flow state, and the Mantis Lords are the perfect example of mechanical mastery in motion. When the Mantis Lords are first introduced, you're challenged with facing one of them. It has 3 attacks, a dash, a plunge, and a spinning blade bullshit, and this first phase allows the player to become comfortable with those attack patterns, and then phase 2 begins, and the 2 in phase 2 stands for 2, because there are 2 of them, and in this moment, the boundaries of the arena fade away, as you're completely enveloped in the fight. So many attacks are flying at you, and you have no time to think, you just do, and what you feel here, this is flow state. But for this to even be possible, mastery over the mechanics must be achieved, and reaching this state is so much more difficult when the player is overloaded with options. Instead of giving the player hundreds of unique abilities for them to keep track of, Hollow Knight has compartmentalized its controls so that platforming and combat become one. For example, a huge focus of the game is the knight's down/slash attack, which can be used for a pogo-like jump in platforming and combat, giving it a plethora of applications via one button press. Alright, Ludo, listen up, we gotta remember this. Keep it simple stupid. The simpler the mechanics are, the better chance your player has of developing mechanical mastery, which is intensely more rewarding than just having a couple more options in combat. Well, yeah, don't get me wrong, there is a ton of choice here with the game's charm system, but how they alter these mechanics are additions, so they maintain the core functionality to perpetuate that mechanical mastery, which allows the player to fully focus on enemy attacks and then countering them. Hollow Knight's opening is designed to introduce you to this harsh world and your inability to conquer it, which is important so that overcoming it via eventual mechanical mastery and then gaining access to new abilities actually feels satisfying. It's all about that juxtaposition, and Hollow Knight nails this aspect of its combat design. Something else I believe the developers nailed is how they naturally teach the player to observe and navigate through the world of Hallownest non-intrusively. As the player tentatively explores Hallownest, they'll encounter aspects designed to teach and guide, like ability blockades, where specific abilities are needed to progress, which encourages more attentive backtracking, and points of no return to teach the players how to use these new abilities without allowing them to go back until they've proven their mastery over those new abilities. But Hollow Knight is a wonderful example of how to condition the player to scour the map for secrets through play conditioning. And the best example being how it teaches the player to look for secret breakable walls. Now, when designing something like this, you want to do it without just going, "Oi, there are breakable walls, you pleb, off your pop." You want to do it in a non-intrusive way that feels player-driven, and this all starts with the geo itself. Along with dropping from enemies, nodes of it can be found hidden in the dark corners of Hallownest, and due to the early and expensive nature of the shop and mapmaker, the player is conditioned to want this currency, and once this sets in, the player will jump at any chance to get it whenever they can. So imagine the player's surprise when in the first area they spot this horde of geo just sitting there. Then, once the player begins to take this third geo node, the wall falls apart, teaching the player that there are secrets hidden within the game and they should be looking for them. And yes, this is incredibly simple, but just consider the alternative, just telling the player with a text box, slicing the thin veil of immersion in half. And this keeps the player naturally in the game world, paying attention to their environment by looking and listening. Oh, yeah, listening, because another one of Hollow Knight's greatest achievements is its careful use of sound. The mapmaker corner humming and the grub's mumbles have the same effect of subtly leading the player to their locations, and this same conditioning via sound can be used to guide the player to secret paths and hidden treasures, as seen in this elevator in the City of Tears. And this is beautiful, organic design that takes the player away from just obsessively looking at the map because they're lost. But that's the point. All of this game's frustrations, its restrictive controls, maze-like areas with ability blockades are there in service of overcoming them. Becoming frustrated with navigation and not being able to achieve certain things just makes the acquisitions of trams, stag stations and new abilities all the sweeter, in part due to this pain and frustration. But this tends to only work in one direction. Yahtzee and I were talking the other day about how coming back to Hollow Knight for a second playthrough feels tedious for having to relive this aspect. You understand what is needed of you, of course, but the returning first-time user experience is plagued by the memory of what the Knight's full repertoire permits and highlights its early restrictions, which makes me extremely curious of how all of this is going to transition into Silksong. Are they going to go with a similar opening, which instills this negative, helpless feeling with a gradual curve of overcoming its hurdles? Wouldn't that just feel like a backward step for the players who have just finished Hollow Knight, which I'm sure most of you have? And does that really fit the pre-established characteristics of Hornet? Regardless, I'm super excited to see how Team Cherry have tackled this issue, or if it's an issue at all. But what do you think? Is the oppressive world and feeble protagonist of Hollow Knight's opening intentional, and will that translate well into the sequel that stars a different protagonist? Let us know down below, because we would love to discuss this with you. Oi, Ludes, I just checked and I saw that you're not in the Second Wind Patreon. And can I tell you, Missy, that you are missing out. We have Patreon Hangout movie nights, we have exclusive experimental videos, and a bunch of other goodies that you could be involved in, but I guess you're too busy with, I don't know, not having thumbs. Well, yeah, that is fair. You do work here too. Okay, yeah, I'll get you added to that after this. Alright, time to say goodbye, Ludo. Alright, bye guys.